Hello and welcome to the Supernatural Track here at Continual. I'm your host, Gail Martin, and tonight we are talking about the must-watch episodes of Season 4. But before we dive into this, let's let our wonderful panelists introduce themselves, starting with Carole.
Hi, I'm Carole Stokes. I started watching Supernatural in Season 3. I started writing fanfic in 2012, and I'm also one of the co-hosts for the podcast, So Get This, The Lore of Supernatural Fanfic, available on Spotify.
Okay, Elektra.
I'm Elektra Hammond. I'm a writer and an editor, and I started watching Supernatural from that very first episode and kept watching it through that very last episode. And I'm still whining about there not being any more.
Yes, I am too. Hopefully they will hear us. Kristin.
My name is Kristin Jackson. I'm a graphic designer and visual communication specialist. I too have been watching Supernatural since the very first episode all those years ago and still love the show today. And just looking back through Season 4 reminds me of how good that series was.
Absolutely. Anna.
I'm Anna Kensing. I also have been watching Supernatural since the very beginning. Have dabbled in some fanfic and just have never stopped being a fan.
Okay. I'm Gail Martin and Morgan Bryce. As Gail, I write epic and urban fantasy. As Morgan, I write urban fantasy, male paranormal romance, but all my modern worlds are ones where Sam and Dean could walk in and feel right at home. I fell in love with the show halfway through season 11, binge watched 11 seasons in 4 months for the start of season 12, and I've never looked back. So let's go around. Everybody let's give us one episode to start with. And then if we, start running out of time, we'll pile on the rest of them. But Carole, what's your number one from season 4?
There's so many good ones to choose from, but I'm going to go for the one that I just lost on my list. Oh, It's a Terrible Life. Oh, sorry, Anna. But you can talk about it. You can talk about it with me. It's a Terrible Life, where Dean Winchester wakes up and he is a corporate muckety-muck. He's got the Oxford shirt that has the white collar with the patterned shirt, which was such a look back in the day. He's worried about getting a little bloated around his waist, so he's got to do that cayenne, lemon hot water cleanse. He's eating salad.
You lost how much weight?
Yeah. The tie flipped over his shoulder while he's eating, so he doesn't get dressing on it. So Sam is wearing a very unfashionable, and yet he still makes it look good, yellow polo and khakis, working in the support phone lines. Turn it off, turn it on, turn it off, turn it on, and being mildly subversive. It's just fabulous. Despite these seemingly new persona, there is a great case. And despite not apparently being hunters, they figure out the case and they figure out how to do it. And one of the ways they do that is they do their research on a ghost hunting site called Ghost Facers. A great little thing there. So the stuff they've taught Ghost Facers, they end up then having Ghost Facers teach them. So it's a really nice little circular thing. It is just wonderful. It turns out, of course, that the whole thing is pretense. It is angel manipulation to get them to get Dean to say yes and do what they want him to do. But in the meantime, it's magnificently crafted. The ghost story is fantastic. The exchanges between Dean and Sam, despite these personas, are classic. It's wonderful, wonderful, wonderful episode. I also just want to add that this episode is one of those episodes that opened up this whole new tangent of fan fiction where everybody was like, oh my God, these characters are fantastic. And so there are stories where Sam Winchester Sam Wesson and Wesson, and Dean Smith, Smith and Wesson, go off hunting. They throw away their corporate jobs, or they find out that there are so many ways that you could do this. And it created a whole new subfiction genre called Swesson, Smith Wesson. So when you see Swesson in tags, that's what they're doing. They're playing off this episode, It's a Terrible Life, as its starting point. It is just, the writing is sharp, witty, the case is spooky, the boys are on point, and it is just a really fantastic episode. And now Anna will extol further virtues to it.
The episode that launched 1,000 fanfics or more. Thanks to the Save It for the Health Club pal line, right? So the contrast between Dean Winchester and Dean Smith are hilarious. I mean, I can't listen to that Kinks song, A Well-Respected Man, without seeing Dean like turn the Prius on and hear rock music blaring out of the radio and sort of shake his head and change it to NPR, which I listen to daily. And so, yeah. But Sam's contrasts are not as great, right? Like Sam Wesson is a tech support guy and he wears the yellow shirt and it still looks good on him. And he's vaguely dissatisfied with his life, but he's still driven to help people despite his initial misgivings about getting involved. And really, like, that's not super, super different from Sam Winchester, really. Like all of the humor of the differences between the real Winchesters and the, you know, personae that Zachariah puts them into are about Dean, right? About Dean Smith eating salad instead of burgers, about him listening to NPR instead of classic rock, about him driving a Prius instead of a classic car, about being a director of sales and marketing and watching Project Runway and not having any beer in his house because, you know, he's on a cleanse or whatever.
No carbs.
No carbs.
But that's actually also makes sense because Zachariah is really pulling the strings to get Dean to heal, you know, to get Dean to hold the line. And so Sam is more collateral damage rather than the focus. They want Dean to.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly. So it raises all these questions about like nature versus nurture, but it's just, it's all a construct, right? Because Zachariah puts them in this environment and then tells Dean that he put him in this environment, and because Dean Smith chooses to fight monsters, that therefore Dean Winchester is going to choose to become the vessel. So, like, I don't know, like, query whether that's really what's going on here.
And of course, there's also the great moment when Sam and Dean first meet in this universe, and they're in the elevator, and Sam is looking at him like, you look familiar. And Dean's like, save it for the gym.
Yes.
All right, Elektra, how about you? What's your fave?
I'm going to start with In the Beginning. This is another, well, first, like Carole, I love this whole season. It's a really, really crisply written season. And In the Beginning, it takes Dean back to where he meets his parents at about his age. And we start to see some of the pieces of where he came from. And we get the surprise of, this is where we first discover that Mary and her family are the Hunters, the Campbells. He meets John. John was going to buy that VW van that we saw in the Winchesters.
And we get that Back to the Future moment in the diner.
Oh yeah. that lovely Back to the Future moment. With the two of them sitting there. I adore all of the bringing it back to the first episode where there's the symmetry between what we know about the boys and their dad, and then finding out what happens when you really meet him as a young man, and the, oh no, go for the classic car. It'll pay you back. You know, you're gonna get it. You're gonna love that car forever. And pointing him at the Impala. And we know that'll work out.
Okay.
Mom's a
And all of the tracing of, wait a sec, I know where Azazel's going to be. You know, my dad was psychic. That's why I've got this book with me that tells me where he's going to be. Because we need an excuse. And him butting heads with Samuel. This was the beginning of Dean butting heads with Samuel. They never really do get along, do they? And it's just a great piece of going back into the past and trying to fix things. And it just never works, no matter how many times they do it. He goes back into the past and meets his parents a couple of times, and every time it just doesn't fix it.
Yeah. Kristen?
I mean, as you can see, I started writing down favorite episodes, and then I just decided I was going to say the whole season is my favorite episode.
Well, yeah.
But the favorite episode for me would probably be the first episode, the Lazarus Rising, because that kind of kicked everything off from, you know, the before times of season 1 through 3, and then the following, you know, 14 seasons or 13 seasons after that. All starts with that episode and the things that kick off from there. You know, Dean coming back from hell, the first appearance of Castiel in a very dramatic fashion. I mean, it was just a beautifully filmed episode all the way through. Dean crawling out of the grave, and you know that stark look, and all the trees are falling down around him in a circle. It was just a very stressful, suspenseful episode for me watching that. You didn't know what was going to happen. You didn't know why he was back. You don't know, you know, Bobby hits him in the face with holy water because he thinks it's like, you know, he's a zombie or something coming back. And it's just, I don't know, to me that single episode just kind of summed up season 4. It's scary, it's funny, it has the high impact drama moments, the personal emotional story. So I don't know, that's just my favorite.
Very good. Anna?
So my next favorite is Sex and Violence, the Siren episode, another episode with fanfic inspo. So the Honey Wagon, great name for a strip joint. And I really love the play on the siren concept, that the siren appears in whatever form that their victim thinks is the perfect mate. For Sam, that is obviously an attractive, highly intelligent, very competent lady doctor. And for Dean, it's Sam. It's his baby brother who still looks up to him and still trusts him and still wants to be with him and still likes all of the things that he likes. And Nick, the actual siren, it turns out that the lady doctor isn't really the siren, even though they thought that she was, but it turns out that it's this guy Nick who poses as an FBI agent. He is dark, right? He's creepy while he watches Dean nearly kill Sam. He's creepy when he describes what a high he gets from having people fall in love and kill for him. And it's just a really well done episode that plays on the conflict between the brothers that has been building over the past 3+ seasons and that continues to plague them. But then we also have some really hilarious lines, right? Like Sam says to Dean, "You seem pretty cheery." And Dean says, "Strippers, Sammy, strippers. We're on an actual case involving strippers. Finally." And There's also a reference where Dean says to Sam, what, like, first it's Madison and then Ruby, now Kara. It's like, what with you and banging monsters, Sam?
Well, and for
Right?
those of us who watched True Blood, we kept seeing Hoyt Fortenberry as the
Right?
bad guy.
As the bad guy. And the first victim, one of the first victims, he says her name was Jasmine, and Sam's like, she was a stripper, and Dean's like, dude, her name was Jasmine. There's this whole exchange between Dean and Nick about like tiny details about recordings of music, and Zeppelin recorded this in 75, but it was a cover of this, and this was a 69 debut album written by this person, and blah, 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 blah. And it's just like, it's just such a great, great episode that really pushes forward a lot of the relationship between the boys, and also, you know, sort of slots in with the arc of the season, but is mostly just about the relationship between the boys.
Yeah. Well, there's so many episodes, and we'll have time to mention many more of them, but I'm going to pick a kind of odd one because it's definitely one of my favorites this season, and it's Chris Angel as a douchebag. Barry Bostwick as a kind of over the hill stage magician. And what I love about it's got a wonderful monster of the week, murder of the week plot. It's got a very good case. But we also have that moment when Dean just tells Sam, well, we're not going to live to get old. I don't expect to live to get old. We're going to die like this. And you can see it in Sam's face that he was up to this point trying to stay away from Ruby. He was trying to be good. He was trying to listen to Dean. But nothing gets ahead of saving Dean's life. And so if he's got to break the rules to save Dean's life, he is not going to let Dean's very nihilistic idea of, well, we're just going to go out with our boots on come true. And that's when he calls Ruby and says, I'm in, because he wants to prevent that from happening. And Dean's just, he can't reach Dean, so he's going to have to go around Dean to save Dean. And of course, that doesn't work out well. But it gives you much more sympathy and empathy for Sam making these so-called bad choices, because all the Winchesters ever do is make bad choices, but they make them for good reasons. You know, road to perdition and all that. Road to hell, paved to good intentions. Boys have both been down it more than once. And so it isn't just, Dean really doesn't give him very much credit in this whole season and the next one for why Sam does the things he does. He doesn't even really ask Sam. He makes a lot of assumptions and then, you know, pounds on Sam based on his own assumptions instead of asking. And this is one of those episodes where we see from Sam's point of view why he's making it. And from his point of view and the stakes, it's not actually that crazy a decision compared to their average life decisions. And so it makes him, I think, we have much more empathy with Sam in this season than Dean does. Because Dean is scared and self-righteous and still kind of going on daddy's programming. And that's just one of the things I loved about that episode, in addition to it just being a well-crafted mystery and case episode. All right, round two, back to you, Carole.
Yellow fever. Definitely not an AU this time. This is a cut and dried, here they are in their gritty little lives, where they end up in this little town in Oregon, I believe. And people are turning into ravening, they're not zombies because they're not dead, but they're not good. And it turns out, so they try to leave and then they can't leave because the road is closed and the people are attacking them. and they hightail it back to town, but they find a haven in the doctor's office. And the doctor is like, I don't know what is going on, but people are going nuts here. But she ends up isolating something in their blood, and a surprise, it has something to do with sulfur. Wonder how that got in there. So it really gets personal though, because one of the people who's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs bites or injures Sam, but then gets blood in his injury. And so they're like, okay, we got to kill Sam now because he's got it. He's been infected, contaminated. He's going to go wild. And Dean's like, yeah, you'll go through me, and ends up locking he and Sam up in the room, tells everybody else to leave. And Sam pleads with him with tears in his eyes. He pleads with him, Dean, go. And Dean's like, yeah, no, that's not happening. You go down, I'm going down with you. And so we see really, really clearly the depths of his devotion. There is just nothing. Oh, I got them mixed up. Okay, so the episode I'm talking about is still the one that I want, which is Croatoan, not yellow fever, which is about a whole different thing that I'm sure one of the other people will talk about, because that's a really funny episode. But Croatoan is the one where they have this plague where the people are turning into these horrible ravening monsters. Dean refuses to kill Sam, and yet in the end, it all goes away. Like it just vanishes. Sam never turns. The doctor comes back. They're like, everybody's gone. We don't know what's happening. And the reason it's called Croatoan because it's written into some of the trees, a la the Roanoke settlement, that everybody disappeared. Nobody ever knows why, except it had Croatoan written on it. Of course, if you read Stephen King, there's a whole nother theory for that, where they all walked into the sea. But anyway, here they don't know what's happened. They're like, well, you know what? Everything's good. We're going on. What? And I am just making hay while the sun shines here. So we'll move on, and Anna will inform us about an episode that's actually in season 4.
Croatoan was a great episode.
Oh, one of my absolute
It
favorites.
lasted so long, I had to talk about it again. So
Absolutely, and it's worth talking about again. We all love it. That's perfectly fine.
Best episode ever.
That's perfectly fine. Elektra?
Now you've gotten me really lost. I will point out that you've gotten a bunch of the ones I had listed, y'all have done. So we're doing good as far as I'm matching up with everybody. The only one we've missed here is the monster at the end of this book, which from the moment they go into the comic store in Kripke's Hollow, Ohio, and get accused of LARPing, that episode always just has me laughing hysterically, where we meet our very first prophet, Chuck, who, as it turns out, may not actually be a prophet after all, but we'll go with it. They discover the books telling the story of their lives as Dean sits in a laundromat reading a book about how he's sitting in a laundromat reading a book.
And Sam has his brooding shoulders.
Yes, there are so very many good scenes in there as Chuck was trying to do this whole literary thing, and it bounced back at him because through the series it turns out that Chuck has always really wanted to be a better writer than perhaps he is, and he's always trying to do this super literary stuff. And he wrote them into the book, and then when he showed up, he slams the door on them. That just was always a little weird.
maybe he found out he was in the wrong season.
Maybe he did. And then they use the fact that, well, prophets are protected to save Sam from Lilith. But we get beautiful scenes of things like Dean with cute little band-aids on him because the little girl takes care of him after their car, hits the Impala. And he's driving around with, plastic over the back window that's been knocked out. So many scenes that are just not Dean, but he's doing them anyway because he doesn't want to do what it says in the book, but he has to. Anything to save Sam. And yet it all boils down to Sam and Lilith and him busting in with Chuck. It's a fantastic episode. It calls back to all sorts of different fun details, and it turns out to be super relevant later on.
Yes.
It ends up being prophetic, so to speak, and
As it were, yes.
the Winchester Gospels.
Right.
Yes.
Right. And also it's one of these episodes where the writers are making fun of themselves. And so they're tossing in all these lines like, I'm so sorry. I mean, horror is one thing, but to be forced to live bad writing, if I'd known it was real, I'd have done another pass. Like,
Doesn't he also apologize for bugs?
he does. He apologizes for bugs. He apologizes for the ghost ship, which I think is a great episode.
I like that. I like both those episodes, honestly.
Well,
I
he
do too.
apologizes for the torture aspects of them.
Well, yes, he
Mhm.
does also apologize for torturing them continually, and because that's just cruel.
Well,
but
and Chuck
yeah.
tells us that he is a cruel and capricious God, which we find out in season 14. He is indeed a cruel,
Cruel and
capricious God.
capricious God, that's a perfect description of him. We just didn't believe him then
That's right. That's right.
because
So,
it just didn't make sense. And yet
So I have one of the posters from the book, Route 666, like the book version of Route 666, and I took it to a convention, and I got Rob Cameron to sign it as Carver Edlin. So it's like one of my prized possessions. This like book cover of Route 666 signed by the author.
Chris, how about you?
Let's see, for a second episode, because this season also had even, with the humor, like, the yellow fever and everything, they had some really just gut ripping episodes in this season that just, I mean, heavy. You end the episode and you think, I need a drink. I need 2 drinks because this was really deep. So for my second episode would actually be the lighter side one, the Ben Edlund wishful thinking. That to me, I can't help but laugh every time, even though I know the jokes are coming, I know the scenes, I know the humor, I know that, I still laugh. I mean, the kid, Neil before Todd, I just break out laughing. And then the teddy bear having the existential crisis and the stuffing, they don't show the stuffing just.
Or
And
tea
I
party?
know that's just terrible of me, but I laugh and I laugh and I laugh. And poor Dean, he's gonna order the sandwich because hey, and the guy shows up and he's, the wishes are bad, Sam. The wishes are bad. And it's just hysterical, pure Ben writing, and I just love it. It just, if I'm feeling down, that's an episode which can just make me feel better. Because these poor guys, it's they do have it's kind of the monster of the week or the mystery of the week, but they have such humor in it. And the poor girl is, she's trying to apologize for this teddy bear that's just gone off the rails and with the porn and it makes me laugh so much. So I am very grateful that Ben wrote this because, like I said, the season 4 had some really heavy episodes.
And her parents are in ballet.
On the head of the pin. Oh my God. That just terrible. I mean, a great episode. I love the episode, but it's also just, emotionally heavy. So the wishful thinking is like a joy in this season.
And her parents wish to be in Bali, so they're
Yes.
parents. I think they're in Bali. And then we see them at the end of their
Little girl.
sunburn.
I love that they're walking off the plane onto the dock and they look baffled. Like,
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
what just happened?
Why was I in Bali? Yeah.
Yeah, and that
Anna.
little girl, she delivers the line perfectly. I think they're in Bali. And they're like, what? Yeah, it is so much fun. I think Ben must have he had a blast writing that one.
Okay, Anna.
Okay, so I'm gonna go dark and mention the one that Kristin mentioned in passing on the head of a pin, right? Where Dean has to torture Alistair to get information for Castiel and the other angels because someone's killing angels and no one knows why. And Alistair was the demon who tortured Dean in hell and taught Dean how to torture other souls in hell. And so now the tables have turned and Dean has to torture Alistair for information. And Dean warns Castiel that he won't like what walks out if Dean has to go in there to torture Alistair. And it's such a disturbing episode, but it's got such good acting to it. And it's also such good filmmaking because they don't show very much of the actual torture. I mean, this is network TV, so there's a limit to what they can do, right? But the prep work that they film, where Dean is like laying out all of the instruments and he's like sharpening the blades and he's like, creating a syringe of holy water and he's doing all of these things. And then off screen screaming and just like all of the ways that they film around the torture to demonstrate to us that what we're not seeing is really, 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 really bad.
I love that actor who plays Alistair.
Yeah, he's really good, right? And also like Jensen does a really good job of sort of like, we're only in season 4 and Dean hasn't gone quite as dark as he's gonna go, right? But Jensen Ackles is just, he's kind of like seeing the like trajectory that this character can go and how far this character can go and what trauma this character has experienced and how he's going to be able to take that out on somebody else. And he just really goes for it. And it's sort of significant in the arc too, because we find out in the midst of this episode that this whole thing about the 66 seals that are being broken by Lilith or at Lilith's instruction are all to release Lucifer from the cage and blah, blah, blah. That all of this begins because Dean, when he was in hell being tortured by Alistair, gave in. His father didn't. His father had been tortured for years, for decades, for a long, 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 long time and never gave in. But Dean said yes to Alistair after 30 years. And Alistair taunts him and says, it only took you, daddy's little girl broke after only 30. And it's just like so heartbreaking because like, I mean, who could survive this for how long, right? But Dean is the righteous man that takes up the torture of another innocent soul, and that this is what is the first domino to fall that creates the whole scenario in this whole season. And Dean is just utterly and completely broken to find this out. So yeah, sorry.
Well, and
yeah, when Jensen does that, he just closes his eyes and his face. It's just beautiful to watch. But it's a very terrible moment. But it's also just beautiful acting, directing, lighting, cinematography, the whole thing.
Yeah. Well, and this is another one where, because there's that drip on the salt circle and it breaks, Sam effing Winchester is the one who saves everybody's bacon. And yet at the end of it, the angels and Dean are still, demon blood boy. And it's like, oh, come on. He just pulled your butt out of the fire. The angels weren't going to do it. And you're still pissed,
The angels caused it. Uriel was the one who caused the water to drip on the salt line. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I'm there in the sidelines every time I watch it going, come on, Dean, lighten up. Well, I'm going to pick a lighter one, and that's Monster Movie. This is the movie. This is the episode in which Dean gets rehymenated. Virginity may be a social concept, but Dean sees it as being rehymenated. But I love it because this is done in black and white, like the old Universal monster movies. It's got a title card, a special title card, one of the few episodes, relatively speaking, that gets one of those. And it's made to look like those old Universal movies that some of us grew up watching, on Saturday evenings on the not famous channel, when they would run them. And it just has so much personality. And you've got the vampire who rides a moped, and all he wants to do is be loved. And he orders pizza and delivery. And Dean in Lederhausen, Dean and Jensen makes them look good. I mean, really, if you can make Lederhausen look good, this is a talent. So there's humor and there's pathos, and yes, it's a monster of the week by being a real monster, but the monster isn't actually real. He just wants to be a vampire. He's not even a real vampire. And it's just, it defies expectations, and it never goes exactly the way you think it's going to go. And it's very tongue-in-cheek, and there are a lot of great, comments and phrases there and quotes. And so it's just a fun episode to watch, and it breaks up some of that tremendous tension from those episodes like On the Head of a Pin, where you need the levity to break it up. So that one's my pick. Carole, back to you.
And a shout out.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Can I just put one thing in? As I was trying to think when you said about the different title card that they did, I was trying to think through the other 15 seasons, other times, and the only other one that's coming to mind is the one for After School Special, which was also this season. So I was wondering, does anyone else remember any other,
very
stylized, thematic?
We actually did a whole panel just on the title cards.
Yeah.
Because there were more than a few, more than I thought, but I can't remember them either. Very Supernatural Christmas.
Yeah.
Oh yes, that one. Yes.
And there was a different one every year.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Every
Well,
summer.
I mean, like the one within the season that's like a,
Right.
thematic with the episode.
Frontierland was like Bonanza, where it had the map.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, that was one.
But anyway, that was just, I love when they kind of got creative and did something that's kind of thematic with the episode. That was always fun.
Oh,
Yeah,
there was
so-
an X-Files one.
Mm-hmm. That was
Yes.
yeah.
Yep.
So there is a whole panel out there recorded on the different title cards for the seasons, because there were enough of them that we could talk about. Well, we could talk about anything for an hour, but we could talk about them for an hour. Carole, back to you.
I'm really going to talk about Yellow Fever this time. The real episode that they played in season 4. Where it's another, basically a funny one. The case is not a funny case, where, somebody who was a little bit different was harassed and ultimately, killed in a very brutal way. So that part's not happy. But what happens is Dean gets ghost sickness, where the ghost has affected him. And it first manifests in him being afraid of everything. We see him being chased, and we're like, oh my gosh, what horrible monster is chasing him. And it's a Yorkie with a little bow. A fabulous scene with the giant snake slithering around. And Dean is like barely able to like keep his stuff together. Although the interesting behind the scenes note on that was that Jared really didn't like the snake, and Jensen didn't mind it, but Sam and Dean were reversed on that. So we see a lot of humorous things for Dean at first, that are just, Jensen really got to play out broad comedy, that was scary, stuff like that. Ultimately, it gets serious at the end because he could die from this, but he doesn't. So that's okay. And also notable for this episode was it spawned the incredible music video, Eye of the Tiger, where the scene where Dean is supposed to be dozing in the front seat of the Impala, and Sam comes and bangs on it to wake him up. In fact, that doesn't happen. And he ends up singing the Eye of the Tiger, and it's one of the best things they ever filmed, off the cuff, not in the actual series. So if you've never seen it, check out Dean Winchester, Eye of the Tiger. But yes, Yellow Fever, very funny, and actually in season 4.
Okay, Elektra.
Lucifer Rising. We finally get the payoff from the whole, we're opening seals the whole season. And Sam's like, I got it. I'm gonna kill Lilith and she won't be able to open that last seal and I will stop Lucifer. Oh shit. And it turns out that maybe that wasn't the right thing to do. And at that very end, we see them fleeing from the fact that they have in fact screwed up and we're going to get Lucifer, thus leading us to season 5, where we get Lucifer. But it's such a good twist. I don't know about anybody else, but the first time I saw this, I did not see that coming at all. I thought they'd squeaked it out in the nick of time and they got her and that was it. We saved it. No Lucifer. That was such good writing.
Well, and it also, again, spawned a whole subgenre of fan fiction in the fix-it fiction idea in terms of the voicemail. Does Sam go through the rest of his life thinking that at some point Dean is still going to kill him? I mean, does he decide Dean finally, well, he hasn't killed me yet, so I guess he's not going to? Does he ever find out that the voicemail was faked? Gee, that and the Samulet, we needed closure on, and I was hoping would happen in the finale, and we didn't get it, but fan fiction's got you covered. Kristin?
There's a whole lot of times when if one or the other of them would just listen to their damn voicemail, things would be different.
Or talk to each other. We could have skipped like all of season 6 and season 8,
Well,
come to think of it.
if they'd gotten themselves a therapist and done some maybe, voice sessions with a therapist, we might have lost a season or 2 to them having better communication paths and doing the work.
Doing the work, yeah. Kristin?
For a third one, it'd probably be The Rapture, because that's kind of a Cass-heavy story and a Jimmy story. So we get to see the person that kind of Cass took over. But then it, had a really tragic sort of quality to it also, that Jimmy kind of had to make a sacrifice a second time, knowing that this time, knowing exactly what he was going to get into, being the host for an angel, but it saved his daughter. So, that, I think this episode kind of spawned, similar to the other episodes, it spawned a lot of fan fiction and kind of laid the path for, the future seasons with, gosh, I'm blanking on her name, the daughter,
Claire.
with Jimmy. Claire, that's it. That's me, because I don't like her that much. I blank on her name.
I'm the only one who likes Claire, so
Oh,
very good company.
okay.
There.
But that I thought that episode was really well done. It gave a lot of backstory and character development. Didn't push things further very much, but I think sometimes we just need a break and get the character side of things, learn more about these people, even in the middle of their, various crises going on. Cass going back, getting pulled back to heaven. No one knows what happened. Where is he? Things are going crazy. Poor Jimmy. He wants off this terrible bus ride. So yeah, that to me was a really meaningful episode for season 4.
Okay, Anna.
Okay, I'm gonna say to round us out, before Gail takes us through the end, after school special, mostly for teenage Dean and how uncanny these younger actors are at playing the younger Winchesters. Although I do think that there's actually too big of a difference between the younger Sam and the younger Dean. Like they're only 4 years apart, like that. Anyway, whatever. But those actors, those younger actors really do personify the younger characters in a really, really well. Really, really, really well. And then there's this exchange with the like high school girl of the whatever, right? The Dean is trying to get into her, whatever.
Awesome.
And she says that she's not mad at him. She just thought that underneath his whole I could give a crap bad boy thing, that there was something more going on, which was 100% my teenage thing. I was like, bad boys, for the love of a good woman, mostly me, they're just going to change everything for me. And it's just like, I respect Amanda for being like, no, he's not. He's not. I'm gonna do my own thing. You can do yours, yo. You do you, Dean Winchester. I'm gonna move on to somebody who's a little bit more stable than you. But also there's a reference to Dead Poet Society, which is another sort of like laundry list of bad boys who, like, for the love of a good woman, won't kill themselves or do bad things or whatever. I have a type, apparently. Anyway, after school special.
And I think that was another good character development story too, because it showed, here Dean came in, he thought that he was rocking the whole high school type of thing. And then it turned out that Sam had the better outcome at the end, that he was happy with, the way things turned out. And Dean was the one that was kind of left out, which was the opposite, the flip of how they were as kids.
Yeah,
Sam
and Sam
feeling outside and not, and here Dean was the popular person that's just sailed in. And
Exactly.
and that kind of was I think a revelation for Dean, seeing Sam happy, and he's kind of feeling now he's left out. So
Yeah.
that was a neat story, and that it really showed some interpersonal relationship drama between the two brothers.
Agreed.
Mhm.
And also Sam saves the day, both in the past and in the current, whereas Dean thinks that he's the one who's the hero, and it's just his like, loser little brother who's the captain of the nerd squad. But it's Sam who, just because he doesn't fight back against the bullies doesn't mean that he's not the hero of this episode.
I also like that teacher, Sam's teacher there, it seems like he's the one who maybe planted that first seed in Sam's mind that maybe he doesn't have to do this. Maybe he doesn't have to grow up to this. Maybe he can chart his own destiny. We don't see him respond a lot to that, but, we get the feeling that nobody else has ever really asked him or talked to him like that, somewhere along the line, someone had to do that. And, there it was.
Didn't he end up being a demon? Isn't he one of the ones that Lucifer showed Sam later had been one of his people?
Yes.
He was a demon.
Yes.
So
And
it wasn't as
Brady.
benign or as good as it seemed, because he was actually pushing
Yeah.
Sam.
But we didn't know that at the time.
You didn't know that at the time.
Mm.
Yeah.
So
There's a lot of
also
retconning going on in this show.
Yeah, that's
I'm going to go with
Again-
Jump the Shark because, first of all, I love the Happy Days reference. I remember that episode. No actual sharks were harmed in the making of this episode. We meet Adam, the extra disposable Winchester, and we got to see Sam getting to be an older brother and teaching Adam how to work with guns. He was going to teach him how to be a hunter. And Dean's kind of hanging back going, what's going on here? Wait, I'm the older brother. He really was kind of jealous there. And it was a great monster of the week. We just didn't expect Adam and his mom to be monsters of the week. I think it's really funny that the mom in Jump the Shark ended up being in Big Sky as one of the office people. She's one of the recurring characters, and she looks so different, but she's right there in that. And of course, we do later get to see Adam again after he got left in hell for a very long time. But you get some really interesting dynamics between the brothers. You get some interesting play there on what John was up to when he wasn't around for his first set of family. And okay, nice that you were trying to do better, Johnny boy, but you could have come back and done better for the kids you already had. And Dean's anger about, what do you mean he took you to a baseball game? You know, Dean's really angry, and he has a right to be. So John Winchester, A+ parenting. Well, folks, it has been wonderful. We haven't gotten through the whole season, but let's go around real quick and let everybody know where we can find you online, starting with Carole.
Carole Stokes. I'm here on Facebook on many continual panels. I'm also often found in the TFWNC group. On Twitter, I am true_firesign10 and fireside10 on Instagram, and my work is all on AO3, Mind the Tags. And under the name Ellis Colton, my first male romance book will be out later this fall. And you can find that name also on Instagram and Facebook.
Awesome. Elektra?
I'm Elektra Hammond. You can find anything you need to know about me at untilmidnight.com, and you can find me on Mastodon at electra@wandering.shop.
Very good. Kristin?
Let's see, you can find me on Twitter, or X as it's now called, as Anicat at ANICAT, and Instagram also ANICAT68. And I'm also did a few short stories, supernatural fan fiction on fanfiction.net as ANICAT68. I got a pattern. I think.
Very good. Anna?
You can find me at annakensing.com and at all of the usual social media sites at some variation of that name, although I don't spend a ton of time on social media. And yeah, I'm also on a lot of continual panels, which I should say, because I think I do more than I recognize. Yeah.
And I'm pretty easy to find at gailcmartin.com, morganbryce.com. All the social media is one or both of those names. So if you spell them right, you'll find me. I run the Supernatural TFWNC group here on Facebook. I'm a columnist for the Winchester Family Business blog, where I also have a few supernatural flash fiction fanfics. And most of the time, you can find me here on Continual. So thanks to our wonderful, wonderful panelists for being here tonight. And thanks to all of you for watching and listening. There will be more Supernatural coming up soon. So we'll see you online.